Today I'm going to survive 100 days in an unforgiving world of Valheim, a game about building and fighting tons of bosses. How much can I achieve and what mysteries I might unravel? Well, you have to stick around to find out. The journey to the mythical Valhalla began in an unexpected way, as a giant pigeon dropped me onto the land. Not one to waste time, I set off to explore the landscape. With nothing but my bare hands, I started punching trees, crafting the basic tools I needed to survive. The noble art of tree punching, a skill not often appreciated. After some time I found a charming peninsula near the spawn area. But before I could start building, I needed food. In Valheim you don't eat because you're hungry, but to boost your base health and stamina. With only 25 health points to start, even a falling tree could kill you. Talk about hazardous landscaping. So I decided to cook the meat I had gathered earlier. The smell of roasting meat filled the air, a welcome break from my hard work. With my belly full and spirits high, I built a simple shack, my first shelter in this wild land. With my basic needs taken care of, I went out to deal with more of the friendly wildlife in this harsh plain. Deer and boar fell to my efforts as I gathered resources and honed my skills until the sun set, bringing an end to the day. When the sun was slowly climbing on the horizon, I started by chopping wood. The steady thud of my axe was both tiring and calming. My peace was shattered when a massive tree nearly crushed me. I narrowly escaped with my life and a newfound respect for gravity. Undeterred, I crafted a bow and spear for hunting. In the dense forest, I pursued swift deer, channeling my inner predator. I successfully gathered hides and meat, feeling like a champion. Back at camp, I cooked the meat. The aroma was a welcome break from the day's work, and a reminder that I wasn't just a lumberjack now. With renewed energy, I upgraded my workbench, allowing me to upgrade my tools as well. Using the deer hides, I made armor that fit well and made me feel safer, if not a bit like a Viking superhero. Clad in my new gear, I felt a surge of confidence. The forest seemed less daunting as I ventured deeper, ready for any challenges, hoping they wouldn't involve more falling trees. Day 3 arrived with a new sense of purpose: explore and hunt more. After all, you can never have too much food or leather, right? I set out with high hopes, but soon enough, my bow gave out, unable to withstand the sheer power of my muscles. Or maybe it was just old and worn out. With a broken bow and a determination to keep going, I made my way back. I had another goal in mind: crafting myself a raft. To do that, I needed to chop down more trees. As the sun began to set, I finally completed my majestic new ship. However, sailing through the night seemed too risky, so I decided to wait until morning. After all, even in the afterlife, it's best not to tempt fate or the dark waters without a full day's light. With the sun slowly climbing over the horizon, I readied my raft for an epic journey. After a comically unsuccessful attempt to leap aboard, I finally set my sails, eager to set forth. But as fate would have it, I discovered that the wind was not in my favor. The gods are against me, I thought, realizing I had to row my way forward. I continued to row toward the boss site I had targeted, but as I neared my destination, I had a sudden dreadful realization. I hadn't brought any trophies. The cruel fate, I exclaimed, staring at the empty space where my trophies should have been. Defeated but not disheartened, I had no choice but to sail back to gather the necessary items. My grand adventure was put on hold, proving once again that even in the afterlife, the simplest tasks can turn into epic quests of their own. On the 5th day, I once more set my sails, but this time, the gods of wind were clearly on my side. I could practically taste victory in the air. Just as I was feeling confident, I had a sudden realization. I'd forgotten my trophies again. With a groan, I sailed back, grabbing what I needed. The time has come. I'm coming for Eikthyr. I roared with determination. This time the wind made the journey smooth, and before I knew it, I was back at the altar. I've passed your trials, mighty deer. Now come, let me release you from your suffering, I declared, ready for battle. the mighty deer's antlers in hand, I sailed home, savoring the thrill of victory and the end of a day well fought. With my new pickaxe forged from the very essence of a mythical beast, a new challenge awaited: the Black Forest. This treacherous land was filled with formidable foes, yet it promised great rewards. My quest began with the search for copper, a crucial resource for my progress. The forest was not without its dangers. I soon encountered a troll, a fearsome guardian of the copper veins. Undeterred, I engaged the beast, but after a few well-placed shots, it fled, clearly intimidated by my might. Seeking to make my life a bit easier, I set out to find certain cores necessary for advancing my crafting. I ventured into the ancient burial chambers, where things started smoothly. However, the skeletons lurking within soon reminded me that I was not invincible. I had to retreat and hide to recover my health, a task that felt oddly familiar, like the time I used to hide from my dad as a child. Amidst my hiding, I lost track of the entrance. After affronting back and forth, I finally managed to escape the chambers. By now, night had fallen, and I was left with no choice but to sprint back to my home. As I raced through the forest, a horde of dwarves pursued me relentlessly. Fortunately, my legs were swift, and I managed to outpace them, reaching the safety of home as the stars glittered above. After the trials of the previous day, I decided it was time to relax a bit. From a newly stolen loot I clearly earned through heroic efforts, I upgraded my armor and crafted a forge. This new addition meant I could now smelt ores, a key step in advancing my crafting. As the forge crackled with the heat of smelting, I took a well-deserved break and set to chopping down trees. After all, what better way to unwind than with a bit of good old-fashioned lumberjack work? The rhythmic thud of my axe against the timber was both soothing and productive. In the end, day 7 was a well-balanced mix of relaxation and progress, setting the stage for future adventures, with improved gear and a forge ready for more ambitious crafting. As the sun rose, I headed back to the forest to gather more loot. With my newly upgraded equipment, the adventure was smooth sailing. No skeleton dared to stand in my way. They were no match for my new gear. Returning to the copper mines, I faced the same troll from before. But once again, the troll, seemingly afflicted with a severe case of stage fright, took one look at me and bolted. The troll gone, I was free to mine copper in peace. After collecting a hefty amount, I made my way back home and set to work smelting the materials. Today marked a milestone. I finally smelted enough bronze. I was overjoyed knowing this meant I could now craft a cart, an invention destined to save me heaps of time. With my new vehicle ready, I ventured back into the forest for more resource gathering. As I roamed, an idea struck me. I think I'm gonna make a temporary base here, I declared with newfound enthusiasm. My new base in place, I set about mining more ores. The cart made transporting the materials a breeze, as I darted back and forth between the ore domes and my temporary base. After entering what felt like an eternity of mining, though let's be honest, it was probably just a few minutes, I set my sights on gathering more serpent cores. For this, I needed to find new burial chambers. So I embarked on an expedition through the forest, eager for new discoveries. As I made my way through the trees, I spotted a massive blue-skinned creature lumbering towards me. My heart sank as I recognized it for what it was, a troll. Fear gripped me, but as a true warrior, I accepted the challenge. I wasn't about to get up close and personal with the giant. Instead, I kept my distance and rained arrows upon him. It was like a real-life David vs Goliath scenario, and the troll didn't stand a chance against my relentless assault. However, victory brought with it another problem. As the sun began to set, I realized I was too far from my base to make it back for nightfall. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, I stumbled upon an abandoned hut. With a sense of relief, I took advantage of this fortuitous find. I quickly repaired the roof, set up a bed, and settled in for the night. In the comfort of my makeshift shelter, I finally allowed myself to rest, knowing that the challenges of the day had been met and conquered. It wasn't long before I discovered another ancient dungeon, its dark entrance hinting at hidden secrets and treasures. With renewed confidence, I ventured inside, ready to tackle whatever awaited. The enemies within were no match for me. I collected several certain cores as spoils of my victory. Feeling victorious, I turned my attention to the towering pines around me, aiming to harvest their corewood. My axe struck with a satisfying rhythm as I felled trees, adding their valuable wood to my haul. With the cart now heavy with my recent finds, I made my way back to the camp. The cart, groaning under the weight of its cargo, seemed almost to resist the journey. Navigating the rough terrain required extra care to avoid getting stuck, and I couldn't help but grumble. Eventually, I managed to get everything back home. Once there, I got to work smelting the ores, the furnace roaring to life. As I watched the flames dance, I couldn't help but feel a mix of satisfaction and amusement, ready for whatever the next adventure might bring. As the sun began to rise on the horizon, I kicked off the day by chopping down some trees. I then crafted a second cart specifically designed for hauling wood. After a bit more effort, I finally gathered enough materials to forge a bronze axe, marking the official beginning of the Bronze Age in my world. With this impressive new tool, I was now able to chop down birch trees and collect fine wood, unlocking a multitude of new crafting options. I spent the rest of the day making the most of my new axe. The once thick forest quickly gave way as I deforested the area with enthusiasm, transforming the landscape around my home. After what felt like an epic saga of smelting, I triumphantly proclaimed, "I'm finally done." With a hearty supply of materials amassed, I turned my attention to upgrading my gear. I resolved to craft a new bow, a pickaxe for swifter mining, and a robust bronze mace. Then it was time to enhance my boat. The raft had been a true torment, so I set about constructing a small ship. My anticipation was palpable, for this upgrade promised to make navigation far more convenient. The new boat also boasted a small inventory, making the task of transporting ores as effortless as a gentle breeze. With these advancements, I felt a renewed sense of readiness, prepared to embrace the forthcoming adventures with both ease and excitement. On the following day, I set myself the noble quest of locating bees. The promise of honey, which will unlock a treasure trove of new culinary recipes, spurred on me. I embarked on my journey with determination. After some searching, I stumbled upon another burial chamber. With swift precision, I plundered its depths, gathering several settling cores among the other treasures. Pleased with my haul, I pressed onward in my quest. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows over the land, I knew it was time to find shelter. The day's lights waning, I set about constructing a temporary refuge to see me through the approaching night. At dawn, I resumed my quest for bees, but the elusive creatures continued to evade me. Just as despair began to set in, my luck turned. "Oh, bees!" I rejoiced upon finally discovering 2 queen bees after several days of searching. Yet the journey was not yet complete. I was so far from home that running back would consume another full day. Utilizing my MacGyver-like ingenuity, I swiftly constructed a raft. Fortune smiled upon me, for this time the gods of wind were favorably inclined. Within minutes I sailed homeward with nary a hitch. Upon my return, I set about crafting 2 beehives to nurture the bees and produce honey. With the addition of a cultivator, I planted some berries. It was honest, diligent work, marking the end of an arduous journey with the promise of sweet rewards ahead. After my recent adventures, I decided to take a well-deserved break. The day was spent in a more leisurely fashion. I chopped wood, mined stone, and planted carrots with a sense of contented ease. It was a day of simple, honest labor, allowing me to unwind and enjoy the fruits of my hard work in a tranquil, productive manner. I soon realized that I needed a proper home. My modest shack was becoming increasingly cluttered. With the prospect of more crafting stations on the horizon, it was clear that my humble abode could no longer suffice. So I set to work leveling the ground, preparing to construct a more fitting residence, a true haven to accommodate my growing needs and aspirations. In the meantime, I crafted a fermenter, trying to brew poison potions for future endeavors in the swamps, though that day was still on the distant horizon. I knew these potions would prove invaluable. For now, I turned my attention back to the task at hand, enhancing my island. The ground was steadily transforming under my efforts, shaping the foundation for my new and improved home. On the 20th day of my journey, I embarked on the grand task of constructing my new home. With a vision in mind, though somewhat vague and fluid, I let creativity guide my hands. As I worked, the shape of the house began to take form, evolving naturally with each passing moment. It was a day of crafting and shaping, marking a new chapter in my adventure. After a few long days of relentless building, chopping wood, running back and forth and occasionally lamenting my trials, my house was finally complete. While it might not have been the most exquisite structure, I found satisfaction in the result. It was certainly an upgrade from my old shack, offering both improved aesthetics and greater convenience. The next day my little forest began to flourish, and I decided it was time to hunt for new ores. With this in mind, I took the opportunity to test out my new boat. Setting the sail, I ventured forth towards the Black Forest. My maiden voyage was a success, and I soon landed on a shore near the forest's edge. Almost immediately, I discovered a copper node. The local residents, eager to welcome me, had even organized a small gathering. However, being somewhat of an introvert, I swiftly clapped their cheeks and instructed them to respect my solitude. The area secured, I set about constructing a small hut, establishing a base for further exploration and resource gathering. On the following day, I began the task of excavating precious ore. With a determined spirit, I set to work, digging into the earth to unearth the copper hidden beneath. The rhythm of my efforts echoed through the Black Forest as I extracted the valuable resources, preparing for the next stage of my adventure. By the time day 27 dawned, I knew it was high time to return home. I had amassed enough copper and tin for the moment, and more crucially, I was utterly fed up of mining. Hours on end had been spent gazing at my screen, monotonously swinging my pickaxe at stubborn green stone. It was a bit like watching paint dry, but with more sweat and fewer artistic rewards. With a sense of relief, I loaded all my spoils onto the boat and set sail. As luck would have it, the gods were on my side this time, and I swiftly navigated my way back. Once home, I dove into the task of smelting my hull, eagerly transforming raw ore into valuable resources. In the midst of this industrious effort, I also took the opportunity to build a small storage space. After all, a clutter base is the mark of a true adventurer who needs better organization. I began the day with the humble task of chopping wood. However, to save from the monotony of every swing, let me skip ahead. The next order of business was relocating and organizing all my belongings into the newly constructed storage area. This crucial step turned my cluttered chaos into a neatly arranged haven, ensuring that every item had its rightful place, and making my life just a little bit easier. I also tended to my little farm, planting fresh carrots to ensure a steady supply of nourishment. Recognizing the need for stronger provisions, I crafted better food to bolster my strength for the battles ahead. Determined to enhance my gear, I turned my attention to upgrading my armor. With my newly fresh minted bronze ingots, I forged a complete set of armor. Its gleaming surface a testament to my progress. The moment had arrived. Time to test all my skills and equipment against a true challenge. I was set to face the mighty Elder, the sovereign of the Black Forest. This would be the most formidable trial I had encountered thus far. While I knew the battle would be tough, I had prepared with every ounce of my effort. But first I needed to reach the altar, and it was no close distance. Fueled by a mix of ambition and apprehension, I set my sail. My first attempt nearly ended in a disaster as I almost crashed. Adjusting my camera's field of view to gain a better perspective, I resumed my journey. Along the way I encountered what I thought was a small island. Was this a test from the gods themselves? "I curse you, Odin," I shouted in frustration. Nevertheless, nothing could deter me. I leaped back onto my boat and now undeterred, made my way to the cursed altar. In a moment of caution, I decided to build a small shelter beneath the altar, just in case the battle proved fatal. It was then that I realized I hadn't crafted a portal to return home, but with unwavering confidence in my skills, retreat was not an option. The battle awaited. As the sun began to rise the next day, I was ready for the grand showdown. There was no room for hesitation. I made my sacrifice at the altar. Suddenly, a shadow emerged, and the Elder began to materialize. collapsed, dropping a swamp key. Talk about a dramatic exit. With the victory in hand, I set sail for home. Along the way I spotted a village and thought, how quaint, but as I approached I discovered it wasn't a cozy little hamlet. It was a drog infestation. Nope, 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 nope. I yelped and made a hasty retreat. Eventually I stumbled upon a swamp. At least it wasn't crawling with undead, but who knows what awaits. I constructed a temporary shelter with a portal to simplify my travels, and then ventured into the swamp to discover its secrets. What did I find? A horde of monsters, a few abominations, and ultimately my own downfall. Crypts? Nowhere to be seen. Deciding discretion was the better part of valor, I made my way back home. Apparently my victory over the Elder ruffled some divine feathers, because Odin himself seemed to send a storm my way as I sailed. Curse you, Odin! I bellowed into the tempest. Fortunately I managed to make it home safe and sound, though my dignity took a bit of a hit. As dawn broke I set my sails with a new goal. Find another swamp. Once again I had to brave the oceans to discover new lands. Thankfully, with my keen explorer's sense, I eventually found the right place. It looked vast and rather promising, so I decided to establish a base there. The final outcome was a bit different from what I had envisioned, but let's not dwell on the details. It was enough for now. I've slept in worse conditions, and I'm not just talking about in games. With my so-called base now established, I felt emboldened to explore this inhospitable place without fear. After a period of diligent searching, I stumbled upon my first sunken crypt. First glance, it was an imposing and intimidating structure, knowing that the iron I coveted was guarded by a legion of monsters within. But surrender? Not my nature. I'm a person of honor. Venturing deeper into the labyrinthine dungeon, I encountered an increasing number of adversaries. Drogs, skeletons and blobs emerged from the shadows, each attempting to impede my progress. Yet none could withstand my prowess and unwavering determination. With each foe vanquished, I advanced closer to my objective. Finally, after surmounting the relentless hordes and navigating the dank, winding corridors, I arrived at the covered iron veins. The sense of triumph was overwhelming. For the first time, I could mine iron in relative tranquility, unburdened by the constant threat of ambush. The once formidable crypt had been transformed into yet another vanquished challenge. For 2 full days, I labored in the depths of the swamp, mining iron with relentless fervor. Amidst the damp and darkness, I uncovered an ancient vestige, an arcane artifact revealing the whereabouts of the next formidable foe. Content with my spoils, I prepared to return home, loading my newfound riches onto my trusty boat. Yet, as fate would have it, the gods had one final test in store. A daunting row across the treacherous seas. But undeterred by the trials ahead, I sang a hearty song of victory as I sailed my Viking ship, now brimming with precious cargo. God, I love this thing. As night fell, however, a chill of apprehension gripped me. Alone on the vast and darkened ocean, I pondered the lurking sea monsters that might be drawn to my vessel. My heart brimming with trepidation, I raised my voice to the heavens, beseeching Odin himself. "O mighty Odin, grant me your strength to evade the beasts of the deep." To my great relief, the gods smiled upon me, and my journey remained undisturbed by any monstrous encounters. As I approached the safety of home, I couldn't help but laugh, imagining the sea monsters shaking their heads and saying, "Not today, mate. It's had enough adventure for one day." And thus, with a joyful heart and a cargo hold full of spoils, I returned to the comforts of home. With iron now in my possession, it was high time for a boat upgrade. I swiftly made my way to the swamps through a mystical portal, seeking the ancient trees essential for crafting my new vessel. Along the way I dispatched a few surtlings, those pesky little nuisances, and diligently worked the soil around the spawner to create a modest little farm. After a bit of toil and patience, I finally completed my new Viking ship. Oops, that's unlucky. The ship boasted a far grander storage capacity than its predecessor, and I began to feel a true Viking's pride swelling within me. However, a true Viking's heart yearns for more than just a ship. Every warrior needs a sanctuary to call home. Thus, I fashioned myself a cozy hearth, a little refuge where I could rest in the comfort of my own creation. Well, sort of. There were no ravenous companions or ale-filled banquets, but it was a start. For now, the hearth was my humble haven, and I savored the thought of it being a place to lay my weary head, even if the full Viking experience was still a distant dream. Having amassed a goodly sum of iron ingots, I resolved to upgrade my gear before venturing into the swamp once more. With great effort I fashioned a suit of iron armor, preparing myself for the grim task ahead. My objective was clear: to find turnips, an elusive ingredient that would enhance my culinary prowess, and aid me in vanquishing even fiercer foes. Turnips, being a rare treasure of the swamp, are not easily found. The dark and dreary biome only serves to shroud them further in obscurity. Yet with my new armor gleaming with promise, I felt a surge of confidence that spurred me onward. I roamed the murky swamp for what seemed like an eternity, but at long last I uncovered 12 turnip seeds. Though modest in number, they were sufficient for my needs. Along my journey I also discovered another settling spawner, and a few sunken crypts, which would surely prove useful in the future. But as I made my way home, fate decided to test me once more. A ghostly apparition materialized before me, accompanied by an abominable creature of nightmare proportions. As a man of honor, I knew I had but one option: to flee with the speed of wind. And so, channeling my inner Usain Bolt, I sprinted away with a swiftness that would have made even the fastest of mortals envious. Within moments I had returned to the safety of my abode, heart racing and dignity intact. The following day I resolved to savor the tranquil rhythms of my Viking existence and venture forth to explore the world around me. It was during this leisurely expedition that I happened upon a curious marker on my map. Oh, a trader! A trader! My excitement was so profound that even my usually melancholy spirit seemed to cheer. Without delay I set up a portal to this newfound haven of commerce and, with eager anticipation, made my way there. Upon arriving I quickly procured the coveted meadows, a powerful item that promised to ease the toils of iron mining considerably. With this marvelous acquisition, the drudgery of excavating iron would become a far less grueling endeavor. My Viking heart swelled with joy, and the thought of future expeditions made easier by such a splendid treasure. I had spent nearly all my amassed gold on the trader, yet there remained one last treasure I yearned to acquire. You see, the crypts are shrouded in a darkness deeper than my sense of humor, rendering the humble torch utterly useless for mining. Determined to find more riches, I ventured into the nearby burial chambers, hoping to unearth enough gold for a coveted Vergara circlet, and fortune smiled upon me. Soon I possessed the necessary wealth for the enchanted circlet. As the storm brewed on the horizon, the task of returning my precious boat loomed large. The journey home was fraught with peril, and the open ocean was unwelcoming. In the midst of the vast storm-tossed waters, a formidable sea serpent emerged from the depths. The creature's presence was a chilling reminder of the dangers lurking beneath the waves. The boat rocked precariously as the serpent drew closer, its intentions clear and menacing. Summoning every ounce of my courage, I seized my trusty bow, knowing that my fate rested in the balance of this humble piece of wood. I took aim and unleashed a volley of arrows, each shot echoing my desperate hope for survival. Despite the serpent's relentless assault on my vessel, I could almost taste victory. After a tense few minutes of battle, I landed the final decisive blow. With a victorious leap into the water, I retrieved the remains of the beast. The serpent meat, a rare and valuable prize, would surely prove invaluable in the days to come, as was the finest food I could obtain at the moment. After preparing a hearty array of meals and brewing a batch of potent potions, I set my sights once more on the swamp. As I journeyed towards the crypt, I encountered the very spectre of my fears, an abomination. Until now I had skirted around these monstrous foes, avoiding confrontation at all costs. But the time had come to face my fears head-on. In a brief but fierce battle, I emerged victorious, my newfound courage bolstered by the potions I had meticulously prepared. With a sense of profound relief, I ventured into the crypt to mine for more iron. The combination of the meadows and the Vergara circlet rendered the task a mere stroll through a crypt, rather than a grueling ordeal. I methodically looted the entire crypt, but yearned for more. The old adage proved true. The third time's a charm. My third crypt proved to be a grand discovery, vast and rich in treasure. Among its depths, I unearthed 2 chests brimming with iron, a windfall that made the expedition all the more rewarding. The following day arrived, and it was time to make the return journey. My tools were as worn as my patience, and I gathered enough iron to build a small fortress. I spent the entire day shuttling loot back and forth, each trip feeling like an odyssey in itself, but the haul was impressive. Over 200 pieces of iron. Surely that must be enough, right? Right? As per tradition, the wind decided to be my nemesis yet again. By now I have resigned myself to the fact that the wind and I are in a long-term feud. With a dramatic flourish and a few grumbled words of defiance, I parked my boat. It was like trying to park a dragon in a teacup, challenging but ultimately victorious. And thus another day of adventure concluded, leaving me to dream of a future where the wind might someday be my ally. For the next few days I decided to indulge in some well-deserved relaxation and respite from perilous quests. My days were filled with a serene rhythm of mundane tasks, tending to my farm, sketching plans for future constructions, and diligently building a dock. I busied myself with mining rocks, yes, even the dock itself, and leveling the shore to ensure my base was impeccably neat. Little did I know that the tranquil rhythm of my life was on the brink of upheaval, heralded by an ominous message. What does it mean? I pondered. My base had been growing steadily, but in my quest for expansion I had neglected one crucial aspect: defenses. The gods, ever watchful, decided to remind me of my hubris by unleashing a horde of trolls upon my humble abode. I devised a strategy to lure these lumbering giants away from my precious creation, yet through sheer resolve and a hefty dose of stubbornness, I managed to vanquish the monstrous invaders. This fateful day would be etched into the annals of history as Black Day 54, a somber reminder to never let my guard down again. Thus, I once more turned my attention to the serene aspects of my life, blissfully ignoring the notion of further fortifications. After all, what were the odds of another raid striking so soon? Holy smokes, bro, this is absolutely stunning. This looks amazing. It seemed the gods had temporarily turned a blind eye, allowing me to revel in the beauty of my surroundings. Yet in the back of my mind, a whisper lingered. Complacency is a fickle ally. After many days spent in the throes of construction, I sought respite from my weary mind. Thus I embarked upon a modest voyage, with hopes of discovering copper and tin. Thanks to the boon of the vein miner mode, the task was a breeze, like a gentle wind on my back. I carefully loaded the ores onto my boat, then set out in search of berries, for my stockpile was dwindling. Berries, those humble fruits, were a cornerstone of my culinary repertoire. Alongside, I had also installed a few new mods, eager to see what marvels they might unveil. Before long, my ship was laden with a bountiful trove of resources. With the hold brimming and the sails full, I chartered my course home. Once ashore, I dutifully stocked the smelters and retreated to rest, awaiting the fruits of my labor. The dawn's light casting its golden hue upon the horizon, I set about tending to my farm. I expanded the fields, sowing a fresh crop of berries to ensure a steady supply of sustenance. The day's labors were varied. I smashed a deer with decisive precision, laid down a new road to ease travel, prepared a feast over the fire, and cleared a few more trees to open up the land. In the tandem with these endeavors, I busied myself with smelting the ores I had mined previously, turning raw materials into useful resources. With fresh ingots acquired, I turned my attention to upgrading my gear. Also, a new bow, gleaming with promise, was soon crafted. Yet it seemed the iron hoard was once again depleted, an all too familiar predicament. It seemed the cycle of scarcity and need was unending. Thus, I began to prepare for a new trial. One that would surely be the most formidable yet. My heart brimmed with both excitement and trepidation. For this adventure was destined to test my skills in ways I had not yet imagined. The stage was set for a challenge of epic proportions. Bring it on, fate. I attempted to cook the serpent meat, but alas, my culinary prowess proved to be somewhat lacking. The result was an exquisite disaster. My dish turned out to be a tad, shall we say, charred. It seemed I had created the most expensive coal the world had ever known. Undeterred, I salvaged the remaining portions, and this time my efforts were rewarded with a feast that was indeed fit for a Viking. My preparations complete, I set my sails once more, ready to confront the greatest foe that lay before me. The gods, as per their customary disdain, seemed determined to thwart my every move. Yet, resolute and undeterred, I gripped the oars and rowed with every ounce of my strength. On my voyage, I chanced upon the plains, a realm so ominously inviting that I hastily veered away. As I continued my journey, a suspiciously small island appeared on the horizon. A shiver ran down my spine as I recognized it for what it was. True to my instincts, I began mining with haste, prepared to abandon the island should it reveal its treacherous nature. And indeed, as the island began to sink beneath the waves, I was already safely aboard my boat, narrowly escaping another of the gods' cruel tricks. Fortune smiled upon me, and after a journey fraught with the trials of sea and storm, I finally reached the mire of the swamp. Navigating through the murk, I soon found the ancient altar. I fortified myself a sturdy shield and performed the sacrificial rite. Before me, a gigantic pile of slime began to take form. Sort of like a gigantic snot monster, if you will. Realizing that my trusty bow wouldn't cut it against this gooey behemoth, I grabbed my mace. This wasn't a time for finesse, it was a time for brute force. My swings were like a rhythm of war drums, pounding away with each mighty blow. Bonemass, that gelatinous horror, seemed to recoil from my relentless assault, as though it were asking, "Is it lunchtime already?" My preparations had indeed borne fruit. The beast's attempts to damage me felt more like an annoyance than a real threat. A few more swings and the creature was vanquished, leaving me victorious and drenched in slime. With my trusty vessel still by my side, I embarked on a swift mining expedition. My pickaxe rang with the rhythm of industrious labor, and before long I had amassed a staggering haul of over 108 iron pieces. The treasure loaded in my boat was a testament to my dedication. As I prepared to sail once more, it seemed the gods were not yet finished testing my mettle. They conjured a thick fog, as dense as my most baffling riddles, presumably to thwart my navigation and send me tumbling into the abyss. But I, a seasoned explorer of both land and sea, was not to be easily deterred. With a steely resolve and my trusty map in hand, like a compass in a storm, I navigated through the murky haze. The fog was but a minor inconvenience, and I made my way home with a smug grin, knowing that no celestial trickery would stand in the way of my iron-loaded triumph. For the ensuing days, I resolved to take a well-deserved hiatus from my Viking escapades and turn my attention toward the realm of base building. I set aside my sword and shield, trading them for tools of construction and creativity, even as the thrill of adventure beckoned from the horizon. I found solace in these moments of domesticity. After all, a Viking's home should be as legendary as the quests they undertake. And so, with a steadfast spirit and a keen eye for detail, I set about perfecting my abode. On the 65th day, the spirit of exploration stirred within me once more. My quest was twofold: further chart the mysteries of my islands and to procure some raspberries, those elusive gems of the wild. The day was spent in a whirlwind of activity, as I traversed every nook and cranny of my verdant domain. My wanderings led me to a colossal mountain on neighboring isle, a majestic titan that loomed with the promise of future adventures. It was a sight to behold, a natural fortress that would surely call me to its heights in days to come. Upon my return, I was greeted by a bounty of over 130 raspberries, a triumph that made the day's exertions well worth the effort. Yet, as I drew near to my base, a cold wind began blowing from the mountain. Fortunately, I had prepared well. The frost-resistant meats I had crafted with foresight turned the icy threat into a mere inconvenience. My base, sturdy and resilient, stood firm against the cold assault. In gratitude for my diligence and resilience, one of the drakes I had defended my stronghold from bestowed upon me a valuable prize, a gleaming iron axe. It was a small yet significant reward, testament to the day's adventures and a harbinger of the trials that lay ahead. I had recently acquired a few new mods, one of which was aptly named Odin Ship. This particular mod introduced a fleet of new vessels to the game, among which was a cargo ship of impressive stature. Upon acquiring this behemoth of the seas, I was thrilled beyond measure. Its vast storage space promised to revolutionize my expeditions, making the days of precariously balancing my cargo on a flimsy raft a distant memory. The mod also boasted a fascinating artifact known as the wind belt. As soon as I laid eyes on it, I knew it was a must-have. Fortunately, the crafting recipe was straightforward, and soon I had this wondrous belt in my possession. With the wind belt equipped, I felt an invincible sense of defiance against any capricious deity of wind who dared to cross my path. I was now preparing for my next grand expedition, a venture into a realm that promised to be more perilous than any challenge I had previously faced. I unfurled my sail, and with the aid of my trusty wind belt, the vessel leapt forth as if it had wings. My destination? The towering mountains that loomed in the distance. Along the way, I couldn't resist the urge to pulverize a particularly sizable stone, and my ship's ample cargo hold graciously accepted the spoils. Soon enough, I arrived at the base of the mountains, my new home for the time being. I set about constructing a rudimentary camp, a modest affair but sturdy enough to shield me from the elements. In no time at all, I had my temporary camp in place, and with a deep breath, I set off to conquer the mountain. Scaling its steep, treacherous slopes proved to be no small feat, but I managed to reach the summit in triumph. The view was nothing short of breathtaking. As a mountain virgin, it was my first encounter with such majesty. My trusty wishbone in hand, I began my search for silver. Thanks to the vein mining mod, I turned the rocky treasure into mere pebbles in mere moments, swiftly found and mined a second day. And before long, I was swimming in silver. The only hitch was that silver is quite heavy. I could only hold 20 ores at a time, while my hull totaled over 300. My solution? Build a cart. Yet even the cart proved useless, weighed down by the silver like a Viking ship loaded with treasure. And so I left my stubborn cart perched precariously at the mountain's edge. After countless trips back and forth, I loaded all the gleaming ores into it, determined to not let a single piece of silver escape my grasp. Along the way I encountered and dispatched a pack of unruly wolves, discovered a frosty cave that might have housed more than just icicles, and even took a daring swing at a towering golem. Victory was mine, albeit with a few bruises and a rather bruised ego. Returning to my cart, I gave it a nudge, and off it went, tumbling down the mountain like a boulder in a Viking's wild dream. Of course, it got stuck a few times, trapped by rocks that seemed intent on thwarting my grand escape. But with a little perseverance and the occasional bash from my trusty pickaxe, I managed to free it each time. By the time I reached my ship, the cart was barely clinging to its wheels, and I was relieved to finally load all my precious loot aboard. With everything secured, I set sail, ready to leave the mountain and its trials behind, hoping that the gods would be kind on my journey home. For the next few days I busied myself with the tasks at hand, tending to the bounty of my recent expedition. Smelting over 300 pieces of silver ore proved to be a task of epic proportions, as the forges roared day and night. Each ingot forged a testament to my perseverance. Amidst the clamor of the smelting fires, I also found time to chop down trees with a vigor that could only be described as primal, and to plant the onion seeds I had so fortuitously uncovered during my journey. My ship, meanwhile, was groaning under the weight of its load, a veritable mountain of stone that had to be carefully unloaded and sorted. It was a sight to behold. The ship almost listened to one side under the sheer volume of stone. Yet, with each heavy stone offloaded and each new task completed, my satisfaction grew. Little by little, my base was taking shape and the fruits of my labor were becoming even more apparent. I cannot quite fathom how it happened, but in a most bizarre turn of events, I found myself trapped within the confines of my boat. The predicament was as perplexing as it was frustrating. After some frantic maneuvering and the aid of my second character, who to my great relief managed to shift the boat enough to free me, I managed to escape, though not without a rather unseemly plunge in the icy depths. Alas, even drowning could not dissuade me from my quest. Undeterred, I set my sights on a new objective: acquiring Ymir's flesh. The very name evokes a shudder, but this grim ingredient was essential for crafting the Frostner, a mighty hammer destined to be a cornerstone of my adventures. After securing the necessary materials, I set about upgrading this formidable weapon to its full potential. With the remaining silver, I forged a new set of armor, one that would surely bolster my strength as I faced the trials that lay ahead. I also took the opportunity to craft myself a Drogfang, a fine weapon indeed. And just like that, my silver reserves were depleted. With a resolve as steadfast as ever, I journeyed back to the mountains, utilizing my trusty portals to expedite the travel. There, amidst the snowy peaks and frigid winds, I set about hunting wolves. Their pelts were crucial for further enhancing my newly forged armor. I ventured forth with purpose, clashing with several golems along the way. With my new weapon in hand, these formidable foes proved as shifting as a mere wisp of wind. With my new inventory brimming and my collection of materials now substantial, I set my course for home. The journey back to my base was filled with a sense of satisfaction, knowing that I had gathered everything I needed. My thoughts were already on the improvements and upgrades awaiting my attention. With a newfound spark of inspiration, I set my sights on a new project. A fishing dock. This ingenious contraption promised a steady stream of fish, a welcome addition to my growing empire. As I worked to erect this passive fish farm, I realized that my humble abode was swiftly succumbing to a state of disarray. Thus, I embarked on expanding my house, determined to stave off the chaos that threatened to engulf my quarters. Determined to procure more iron for my next grand design, I set sail once more for the swamps. My plan was simple: gather vast amounts of iron and bring it back to my ever-expanding base. Upon reaching the murky shores, I suddenly remembered, too late, that I had neglected to bring the swamp key. A minor oversight, or so I thought. However, fate had a more devious plan in store. As I maneuvered my boat into position, I misjudged the shallow waters and grounded my vessel with a rather unceremonious thud. No big deal, I mused, dismissing the situation with casual nonchalance. I busied myself with mining iron, blissfully unaware of the trouble that awaited. It wasn't until I tried to depart that the gravity of my mistake revealed itself. My boat, firmly wedged in the muck, refused to budge. "Oh, splendid!" I muttered, surveying my predicament. For what felt like an eternity, I labored away, chipping at the stubborn earth around my vessel. At last, after considerable toil and muttered curses, I managed to free the boat from its aquatic prison and sail away, albeit with a newfound appreciation for the treacherous shallows. Upon my return to the homestead, the time had come to process the treasure trove of materials I had amassed. As the iron ores began their transformation into usable ingots, I resolved to take a well-deserved respite from daring escapades. It was high time to shift focus from perilous journeys to the sanctity of my base. My primary objective was clear: fortify my stronghold. The memories of past raids and the chaos they wrought were still fresh in my mind. With a vigilant eye and a steady hand, I set about reinforcing the walls and defenses of my abode. The gods had shown me that safety was no mere luxury, but a necessity. And as such, I labored with purpose, determined to shield my home from any future calamities that might dare to breach its walls. I commenced my task by expanding the very island upon which my home rested. The ambitious endeavor required a steady supply of materials, so I set about gathering what was needed. Stone and wood were my primary allies in this quest for enlargement and enhancement. With each swing of my axe and each pick of my pickaxe, the island grew, taking shape and form under my diligent efforts. As the sun journeyed across the sky, I worked tirelessly to procure the necessary resources. The island's expansion was not merely about increasing space, but about preparing a stronger foundation for the future fortifications that would soon rise upon it. Thus, the groundwork was laid for the fortress that would stand resilient against the trials to come. While the result wasn't a grandiose castle by any stretch, it was a vast improvement over the confined quarters of my little house. The new workspace, though modest, proved to be far more functional. With ample room to maneuver and a touch of rustic charm, it became a welcome addition to my growing domain. On the following day I got myself a few new mods, which will make my life a lot easier. I decided to test them, so I spent the day in a more leisurely fashion. One of them is called My Dirty Hoe. As bad as it sounds, this mod will help me immensely with transforming the land, as it comes with various terraforming abilities. I set out to gather more silver, aiming to fully upgrade my equipment. To my delight, I quickly discovered 2 new veins of silver and extracted them with remarkable ease. Transporting the precious ore was also a breeze, thanks to the new mods. While running around the mountain, I couldn't help but notice that the day seemed unusually long. Whether it was a trick of the mind or a quirk of the new seasons mod, which now appears in the right corner of the screen, I am not entirely sure. Additionally, the mountain proved to be a great spot for gathering stone, so I took advantage of the opportunity and collected a good haul. My cargo full, I decided it was time to head home. The day was dedicated to smelting ores, transforming raw materials into valuable resources. Day 93 was all about enhancing the comfort of my humble abode. I crafted a ground throne, allowing me to sit in true Viking style and reign over my domain with newfound dignity. In addition to this regal upgrade, I spent the day smelting ores, relocating forges and constructing several reinforced chests to boost our storage capacity. With these improvements, our home is now better equipped to handle the growing demands of our adventures. It is 95th day of my adventure, and in a twist of fate, I somehow skipped the entirety of day 94 simply by sleeping. I must have been really tired, but truth be told, I think my game just bugged. Today I plan on more blueberries. Soon we shall have a bountiful harvest. As I gazed upon the serene waters, I thought about building another dock here in the future, a grand addition to our humble abode. I also conducted a fish extract, quite an amusing little experiment. Testing the power of the Elder was on the agenda too, chopping the trees nearby. And of course, no day would be complete without a bit of copper mining. Next day's tale begins with an ambitious quest to find silver using my trusty hoe. Alas, it seems this mountain is too small for such treasures. Undeterred, I mined some tin and hurried back home. Once there, I set about crafting a magnificent drake helmet. Ooh, look at how cool I look now. With newfound vigor, I began working on extra dogs. Just as I was getting into the rhythm, I was suddenly attacked by skeletons. After a fierce battle, I emerged victorious and returned to my dock building. The first dock was done, and the second was in progress. Today I completed the second dock and swiftly moved on to finish the third. The docks in place, I turned my attention to making a sturdy fence and started crafting a path to connect everything. A day of steady progress and careful planning. I began by planting new seeds, adding to our ever-growing garden. However, I almost drowned while working near the water. Quite the fright. With the docks now complete, I added some final touches, ensuring they were perfect. I then took my small boat for an expedition to the mountain, but nearly crashed into my own docks. And the third, I sailed on, even braving a fierce storm. I almost crashed a second time, but managed to steer clear. My goal? To retrieve the elusive dragon eggs. Day 99's journey took me to the heights of the mountain in search of dragon eggs. Along the way I discovered a frost cave and battled some foes, though they were easy to defeat and offered little of interest. However, I did find some bronze. Eventually I located the dragon eggs while fending off enemies. With my prize in hand, I returned to the boat and decided to experiment with faster boats mode. Alas, this led to a crash, leaving me with no choice but to swim to shore. As if things couldn't get worse, I was attacked by dwarves upon reaching land. After dealing with them, I crafted a new boat and retrieved my loot. During my exploration, I stumbled upon a quaint island with a small hut and, amusingly, a surtling spawner in the water. Quite the sight. Day 100 has arrived, and what a day it has been. I was still out at sea when I suddenly realized, oh, I had forgotten to bring any portals. Typical. I finally spotted land and was promptly attacked by a vicious death squiddo. Undeterred, I pressed on and discovered a mountain, only to find it lacking anything of interest. But fortune smiled upon me when I stumbled upon a tower. Praying for a stroke of luck, I hoped to find an ancient vessel that might reveal the location of the next boss. And my prayers were answered. I found the ancient Vesigir. It pointed me toward another mountain. So I decided to head back home for now. On the way I faced another death squiddo. He feeded some pesky feelings and even found some cloudberries. Feeling a bit too confident, I met an unfortunate end when I was caught off guard by a lox. It seems I forgot to use my potions in the heat of a battle. And so with that dramatic finish, I believe this marks a fitting end to this 100-day journey. Until next time.